Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Zaria. I'm the Growth Marketing Coordinator here at Higher Level. Super excited to talk with Carrie Burchill. She is one of the Higher Level favorites. So she'll be talking to us about navigating culture from the inside out. Before we get started, I would just like to let you all know you are in listen only mode. So if you have any questions, this webinar will be interactive. So put them put them in the chat, and we'll have some fun. This webinar will last less than an hour, so no worries. We'll get you in and out. So before we get started, I will just like to say a fun fact. Last Friday, Carrie and I and the higher level team, we had a higher level retreat. Again, Carrie is one of higher level's favorites. So of course we talked about culture and we talked about all those good things and how to communicate and things. So I'm super excited to hear what Carrie's going to share. And Carrie, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thanks, Zaria. I was telling Zaria while we were waiting for everybody to join just how she's been so communicative and really helping me feel set up for success. So thank you, Zaria, for this. Higher Level was my first ever client in my consulting world. I want to say like 7 years ago. And we keep finding ways to contribute. Higher Level is doing some work on their culture too. My only client right now that is having whole company retreats discussing culture. So like hats off to Higher Level for not only like walking the talk, but really living what you're talking about. So you'll see some of this stuff, Zaria, from things that we've worked at over the last year as well. So
Oh, it'll be great. It'll be great. I'm sure they'll take away some things like I did.
Awesome. So as Zaria said, we are going to be interactive. So I was saying earlier, like, can we put them in breakout groups? But of course, the go-to meetings doesn't really do that. So I'm really relying on everyone to chat in your thoughts and make this what you want it to be. I have an education background. So if we end up spending a little less than I thought on a slide or a little more, or just pausing everything just to answer questions, I want to do that. This is for you. That's how I run my facilitation work and the sessions that I do. Like, this is about you. I have some stuff to share, of course, but it's about you. So with that said, let's dive in. I'm going to start sharing my screen. So today we are talking about managing and navigating culture from the inside out. So we're going to talk about definitions, culture concepts. Oh, not the breakout group. I changed those slides earlier on, like 3 minutes ago, but I forgot to change the agenda. Anyway, you're going to walk away with 3 strategies. Let's go. So I love this expression, culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? So you can have full day breakout sessions, think hard, strategy galore, and then culture enters the picture, just blows everything up. So that's what we want to get a hold of today, because there's no point spinning your wheels coming up with the best strategies when culture hasn't been addressed. So how would you describe culture? Let's see what you think culture is. Workplace culture, chat in your thoughts. And there's a lot of different definitions for culture, so I'm not looking for like any specific right or wrong answer. I just want to sort of hear where the group's at, what you're thinking culture is. How do you describe culture? Like, what is culture to you? I know how it works on these webinars. People are listening and grabbing information and multitasking. It's going to be richer if we get the answers in the room and sort of everybody sharing your brilliance, right? All right, I think we have some people still chiming in. Zaria is kind of letting me know on the side here. So culture is what people do when no one is looking. What people do when no one is looking. So often we sort of wait for our leaders to fix things, leaders to correct behavior. Well, the leader isn't everywhere all the time. So that becomes a little bit challenging. So we want to think about what everyone's role is inside the culture to change the culture. Because what people do when no one was looking, obviously people aren't around everywhere, every place all the time. And so we want to get at this behavior, what people do when no one's looking, and help redirect it. So let's just do a quick check-in here. I want to know how you're feeling your culture is. So if you want to grab that QR code, or I'm just going to escape here for a hot second and drop it in the chat also. Might be easier for you just to grab it in the chat. Click on that. Let's have a look and sort of see where you're at in terms of your culture? I just need to press play on this, but my GoToWebinar is overlapping the other part. Okay, there we go. So let's hear, how healthy is your culture? It's super healthy. It needs some work. Help. So you can grab that QR code, or you can drop in the link that I put in the chat, or you can use the menti.com and the code at the top. So how healthy is your culture at work, would you say? What? Something went wrong? Let me get us back in here. You can see my back work here on the Mentimeter and where it's happening. Maybe go to, I don't know, Zari, maybe go to meetings just punted me out of Mentimeter. Yeah. You know what? I'm going to work on this on the side while we continue to work towards our PowerPoint here. If you want to chat in your comments here, how healthy is your culture? So super healthy, it needs some work, or help. It'd be neat to hear from people in our group today about how is your culture, just as a starting point. So when we think about culture as what people do when no one else is looking, we sort of have this gap between, you know, someone, listen, I need you to do this on the right-hand side there, and then the other person just kind of going like, what? I'm going to do whatever I want to do because you're not going to be around me all the time to tell me what to do. So we have this gap in culture. And so when we think about the consequences of a not great culture, right? That can impact the customer experience if you're in the service industry. It can impact how people engage with the work, right? So if people are not feeling safe in the culture, then they're not going to engage in the work. You're going to have less brainstorming. It's going to be less collaborative. You're not going to have the same innovation come out of that because the culture just isn't there. So you want to think through, you know, how valuable it is to spend some time on culture when it's like messy and nebulous. And we really often avoid culture. We just hope that it'll sort of iron itself out over time. And the consequences of a not great culture can really impact the bottom line. You know, you're not going to make as much money. You're not going to have the new clients. People aren't going to be happy when they come to work. So you're going to have more turnover, all of kind of the problematic stuff that happens when we don't have a great, healthy culture. So as we think through our work today, I want to introduce this idea of the culture pyramid. So that's, culture is really formed of these 4 levels. So people have an experience at work, and that drives them to have a belief about their work based on their experiences. And those beliefs drive their actions, and those actions drive results. So for example, if I have an experience that my colleagues don't have my back, you know, I'm kind of out there on an island and I ask for help and nobody helps, then I believe that I work with a bunch of unfriendly, uncooperative people I don't want to be friends with. So my action is to look for other work, because who wants to work around people that aren't helpful and have your back? The result is I leave, you miss all my brilliance, and now there's a hole in the company. The rest of the team has to pick up the slack. You take 6 months to onboard somebody else, might be longer if it's a hard to fill job. Like, all of the domino effect happens out of this. So if I had an experience where I ask for help and you help me, I believe that my work's awesome. I love my job. I'm now acting in a way that is happy. I'm telling my other friends about how my job is so fabulous. The results are you're going to hire more great people like me that want to ask for help and receive help and have your back like you have my back. And the action is now we have a company that's full of great people, super positive. The results are the customers come in and they just feel our good vibe. The results are my team works better, and so we problem solve faster. We're really fixing things. We're delivering a better product for our customers. Like, all the magic happens when we have those great experiences. So when you think about driving culture from the inside out, we want to first help people interpret their experiences in ways that are helpful. So let's kind of talk about how experiences drive beliefs, beliefs drives action, actions drive results. Ultimately, we want a culture where everyone is in the circle. So this is kind of an expression that I use to help that feeling of inclusion, where I want to ask for help and I know you're going to have my back because we're in the same circle. You could ask me for help and I'm going to help you because that's what we do in this organization. Whether you see it or not, we have each other's back. And that's part of being in the circle, right? So if our culture is one where we have each other's back, a new person gets hired and they are like independent workers. They are autonomous. They don't really want to be a team player. They're going to be out of the circle, right? They're not going to have the same norms, values, behaviors, and beliefs as we do. And so you kind of have all these wood-colored circle people on the right, and then you have this red person on the outside kind of going like, oh, I'm autonomous, I'm independent, I don't ask for help, I don't really help, I just do my work, I don't need to be social. You're not in the circle there, red man on the left. And so you want to make sure that you're not only hiring people that fit, but that people know what your circle is made of. When we think of those norms, values, behaviors, beliefs, really putting words on those things so that we are saying, hey, here, this is what the culture looks like. All right. So when you think of your culture, and it seems like we have a quiet group today, Zaria, I wonder.
Actually, Jody has been commenting. You
Oh,
had moved on, so I couldn't say it right then and there. But
oh,
she said the overall atmosphere. I'm assuming she's talking about her workplace. The overall atmosphere and everyday feeling in the workplace.
hmm.
Um,
You nailed it, Jody. Thank you. I'm not seeing those, Zaria. So,
really, it's okay. I'll keep up with them for you.
okay, perfect.
And then she said it's healthy and it needs work.
Okay, good. A little bit of both, depending on which people are in which circle, I would imagine, Jody. Thank you for
Yeah.
chatting. That's awesome.
And
Yeah.
then Mary
Hmm.
Boland says,
Are you there still?
yeah, I lost Mary's. Up, less productivity.
Right. That's a problem with poor, yeah, with poor.
Productivity.
Hmm.
And then that is it. Is there, Carrie, is there a way that you can put the link to these surveys in the chat as well?
Yeah, I did. I put it in the chat right underneath our higher level one that we were practicing with before we.
Oh, here you go. I'll drop it right here.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
There we go. All right, that was it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, the people that have chimed in. That's awesome. I appreciate you sharing your insights. I want to get the Mentimeter going again because I think that is it normalizes a little bit of the like my culture is healthy and it still has some work. Give me 1 second just to see if I can get this going. So it's funny with culture, like because it's so nebulous, organizations really avoid dealing with it because there's not like a clear-cut ROI dealing with culture, but we can say that people are going to feel healthier, the recruitment is going to be better, we're going to have less turnover, all of that kind of stuff gets fixed, but companies can't really measure it in black and white. You know, you might even have engagement surveys. I've actually got a culture survey that I use that helps people assess anxiety and well-being, and a third element. And it, you know, you can even use surveys to kind of help gauge what it looks like, but it's still, I mean, we just avoid culture because it's so hard to like measure really concretely. And so I appreciate people just saying like, hey, yeah, culture is okay, but it could be better, or maybe culture is problematic. And that's why you're here to kind of think through the problems that come up as a result of the culture and what do we want to see more of, because that's really driving the culture from the inside out. So here are 3 strategies that I'm going to help you with today. And it doesn't matter what your role is in the organization, everyone can drive for some of these things in small conversations and bigger conversations. So the first strategy is crystallize what everyone wants in their ideal culture. The second is to reinforce the behaviors you want. And the third is to direct the behaviors to those you do want. So let's talk about the first one, crystallize what everyone wants in their culture. So there's 2 things that I'm going to share with you here. One is how to structure the discussion, and the second is facilitation tips that help get at what you want in the culture. So these are some real posters from some work I've done over the years where you start the conversation around like, what do great cultures look like? Well, you know, everyone's easy to share the good stuff, right? Laughter, teamwork, smiling faces, and there's just, you know, then you can drive it into opportunities. Well, there's an opportunity about how we help each other, body language, keep track, safety, OCD, you know, done the right way, my way, right? And it's interesting when you give people a chance to talk about this stuff, they will talk about it. What are some opportunities? Nonverbal, we huff, we puff, we roll eyes. I mean, teams will just talk about this stuff because nobody wants to stay in a culture that's not healthy. Here's another group, right? What do they want in their ideal culture? Trust, communication, honesty, not afraid to ask. So lower pride. So these are just conversations that you could lead in your teams with a colleague. Maybe you're out walking after work or at lunchtime and just talk about like, hey, what would make this place a place you want to stay forever? So a strategy in getting at those ideal behaviors is to really name a character, right? So when you start crystallizing what is it that we don't want, kind of giving them a nickname. So Zaria and I at Higher Level, we did this on Friday actually. And I don't know, Zaria, if we want to share the nicknames that Higher Level came up with, but this is another anonymous team. And they kind of said that the person on in their culture that they really don't want to be like, they're just going to name them Pat. Well, what does Pat do? Well, Pat sighs, rolls his eyes, not engaged. You know, they talk negatively about each other. Pat could be female too. Maybe judgmental, right? All these things. And so you could easily just say to someone like, hey, are we being Pat here? Maybe we need to redirect the conversation. Or is that a Pat moment? And you don't have to get into a big conversation, right? Because we've already identified what we don't want in our culture and we've identified what we do want. We want more Lucy, right? Someone who's engaged, not involved in everything. They're supporting the team, respect for differences. And you can have this conversation that not only like the poster papers where we were just listing things here, you could, because these types of conversations are several series of conversations. People need time to sort of ruminate and think through how they show up. So you can start the conversation with just a long list of things like this and then drive it towards, you know, let's summarize it here. And in this group, it was an IT department in a healthcare setting, and they left these posters up in the break room for months. And everybody we were all clear on what we wanted. We all had input on this. And so it was a really good North Star for the organization to go through that. So you might say, gosh, how do I get to the posters, get people talking, and then actually naming a character? Well, just really start with a very simple question of what does an ideal team look like to you? It's amazing how people will start just blah, 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 about that. I'm pausing this area to see if we have questions or thoughts.
I am not seeing anything right now.
That gave me a second to have a sip of tea, so winner, winner. Okay, so just asking this simple question, what does an ideal
Oh,
team?
Carrie, someone said that they're getting an error trying to join the mentee.com, that link.
Yeah.
Let me try to.
Here we go. Let me do this. I wonder if there's like some competing between. I'm gonna leave this slide up in the background, and people can try Menti, and we'll come back to it in a second just to check in on where people are at with their culture. It might work now that I press play. It wasn't loading when I was trying to do it earlier, so thanks to that person for engaging and just playing around with Mentimeter. So when you ask this question, what does an ideal team look like to you? Invariably, every single time I've done it, the group will start saying what they don't want, which is still good. You want to drive the conversation to sort of ideal team. Another question that you could use to structure the discussion is to do a stoplight. So red light, yellow light, green light. What do we need to stop doing? What do we need to adjust? And what do we need to keep doing? Right, so two ways to kind of think about it. What does an ideal team look like? Just open or a little more structured with the stoplight. And then as people are talking, you want to keep the discussion future focused. So people are going to complain and talk about the past a lot. Drive it towards the future because that will save the blame judgment game. And it keeps the discussion objective, which feels safer. So if I sort of say, well, last Friday when I did the retreat with Higher Level, this is what happened. Well, I can't do anything about last Friday. What I can do is say, next time we get together, how do we want that retreat to go like with Higher Level? And then it's a neutral ground because it's the future. It hasn't happened yet. Now, of course, that's not true because I love my Higher Level time. Oh my gosh. I just actually sent Summer some stuff last night, Zaria, in capturing some of our brilliance on Friday. But as an example, the second strategy is to break down the big concepts with questions. So great team, somebody will say, well, communication. Well, give me an example. What does that look like? How can we drive forward more? Or they might say, well, we need trust. Well, trust is so huge. You know, what does trust look like? Well, they come in when somebody's absent. They're confident in their team. They go to someone if there's an issue. They share their feelings. They're genuine. Break it down. So keep asking questions when they talk about things. So keep it future focused. Break down big topics with questions. And another way of breaking down the big topic with questions is to say, okay, trust. What would that look like? What would that sound like? What would that feel like? And it helps get concrete. So I think of one team that I used to work with, and I'm just going to stop sharing here for a hot second. And they recognized that they sighed, they did all these things that really made them not want to go to work. And so when we said, well, what does that look like? Well, they stopped hiding. Oh, I don't know what hiding means, right? So, well, what does hiding look like? Well, 20 minutes in the bathroom. Okay, so if someone needs to go to the bathroom, what would that look like? Not literally, of course, right? And so they talk about, you know, the timeliness of taking the break to go to the washroom, how long that would reasonably take. Another example, when we said, what does that look like of being a good team player? They said, stop hiding. What they would do is they would do deliveries to a second floor, but they would take the service elevator because it was so slow. And then their arms are empty after they deliver things on the second floor. And what would they do? They would hide again and take the service elevator down, right? So without getting at those questions of what does that look like, sound like, feel like, it's hard to really envision exactly what the problems are. So once we identified what hiding looks like, what does that sound like? Well, maybe you're delivering something and you say to someone, hey, can you grab the door for me as you go upstairs? Or, you know, and then we talked about safety. If your both arms are full, which elevator should you take, blah, blah, blah. Like we really got granular on doing that kind of stuff.
Hey,
All
Carrie,
right.
we have 2 questions that came in.
Great.
So Flora said, in what ways does organization celebrate and embrace diversity?
Mm-hmm. Lovely question, right? So when you think about that part of culture, asking the group that, how do they want to embrace and celebrate diversity? And really getting clear on what the experiences are that people want to see that are going to drive their beliefs and their actions and their results. Yeah, great question,
And
right?
she had one more.
Please.
She said, how important do you think cultural understanding is for building effective relationships within the organization and community?
Yeah, so it sounds like we might be thinking of culture from a like a societal lens. Like I'm Canadian, right? I'm an immigrant. That's part of my cultural background. And I'm talking even one layer broader than that on culture as the way people show up at work. So read the question again, Zaria, please.
How do you think cultural understanding is for building effective relationships within organizations and communities?
Yeah, so let's go back to this. Let's go back to this in the circle thing, right? So if I don't even know the people that are in my circle, and if I don't know what they value and what they believe in, then it's pretty hard for me to build relationship. And if I don't have relationship, then our culture is just going to crumble. Right? If we can't get to the point of even being able to have open conversations around what do you need to feel safe and to thrive at work? Wow. Right? So absolutely, whoever's asking those questions, like spot on. And you know, friendliness, like even looking at this one word here on this poster, randomly picking a word, you know, friendliness is going to look different in different cultures. You know, I just came back from Canada and Belize back to back, doing some international keynotes. And in Belize, right, very, very communicative, very verbal culture, right? So when you walk up to somebody on the street, morning, morning, hi, hi, like you're greeting people. In Canada, you say, how's it going, right? And you actually want to hear how the person is doing. In the US, when you say, hey, how's it going? The other person might say like, hi. That's more of a greeting. So I might think of friendliness if I was acting as a Canadian in the US and I said to you, how's it going? And you said, hey, I would think, oh, they're not friendly. Like, I'm really wanting to know how they're going. Like, you go in stores and stuff in Canada and, oh, pretty good day, or oh, it's not bad, eh? Like, you'll actually hear how people are. I might misinterpret the friendliness because I don't understand your immediate cultural background, because we haven't slowed down to sort of say, this is what friendliness looks like to me. I think of
Okay.
just as another example, I was working with an engineering firm, and there was a person there who was like terrible until about 10 o'clock in the morning, just someone who was not a morning person. And so that group understood that that person just needed to be left alone till 10, not because they were a jerk or unwilling to participate or not do their job or anything else. That's just the way they are wired, right? So part of our being in the circle is understanding what people need and respecting that. It's not like the person who was just not a morning person till 10 was a jerk or anything. They just needed to have space until 10 in the morning and a couple cups of coffee. And so when we think about the norms, we respect each other, we know each other. What do we value? You know, meeting people's needs, respecting their diverse whatever things they need. And it could be from not a morning person, it could be the Belize, Canadian, US cultural background, it could be our life experiences and how that shapes us, whether or not we want to pray before our lunches or not, or whatever that is. Zari, I think you were going to say something.
Yep, we have a couple more questions. They're
Great.
they're rolling in fast.
Nice. I love it.
So
Could you try again? Jeez. Okay. Siri, for some
okay,
reason, thought I was talking to her, and I'm not.
that's Siri. Siri's always listening. So last name is Kimento. He said, what role can individuals play in contributing to a positive and inclusive cultural environment?
Great. I am going to get to that next. So hold on to that question, because there's my second sort of big series of things you can walk away with is going to answer that question.
And then they asked again, reflecting on your time within the culture, what legacy or impact would you like to leave behind?
Yeah. Yeah. Great questions. Like, those are ones we can, if everyone's seeing the chat, those are great questions to structure the conversation with your teams. You know, how do you want this experience to go? What is your legacy going to be to feel fulfilled in what you're contributing here? How can all of us rally around? Because in all of those legacies, there is some overlap, right? And so how do we zero in on those norms, values, behaviors, belief of the overlapping parts of what we all want out of experiencing and kind of living in this culture? Yeah, brilliant.
And
Okay,
then
yeah.
Flora said, considering the evolving nature of cultures, how can individuals contribute to a sustaining positive aspect of the culture while allowing for healthy adaptation?
Yeah, so great question. These examples that I've given you with the chart papers and the names like Lucy and Pat, those are ongoing conversations. You're absolutely right. The conversation is not one and done about culture, like we're defining what culture is. We're now in a box, done. Culture is an ongoing discussion around what is working, and hey, moving forward, maybe we could start blah, blah, blah. Absolutely. It's a once you establish the foundation of the norms, values, behaviors, beliefs, and there's sort of a shared agreement around as a general statement, this is what it is to be in our circle. Once we're agreed on that, then we can easily have ongoing conversations, and it doesn't have to be like the big work of the initial sort of kickoff, several conversations to identify what we want that to be. I'm working with the police department right now as an example, slowing down with them, thinking about what is the future of policing, and how can we build some of those behaviors and character traits in the police department that we know are going to be skills that we need as policing evolves, right? So thinking about our future culture and the challenges that we are facing and are going to face, how does that shape our culture? And how can we start growing people with those skills to sort of fit in the circle given what we anticipate the culture is going to be in the future. Yeah, so you can get really nuanced in this. But initially, if you don't have those big conversations, chart papers, name someone, don't name someone, that's kind of secondary, but really getting granular around what does communication look like? How often should we respond to email? How many times should the phone ring before somebody picks it up? You know, how many back and forths do we go in an email before we actually have a conversation? You know, what do we do with remote workers? What do we do with, you know, people want to go out and have a drink after work? Is it bad if you don't? Like, what do we do with these things? How do we show up and show ourselves in a way that fit to get the work done? Okay, Zaria, I'm sharing.
Okay.
All right. I love that you're popping in with questions. Good, good, good. Okay. So facilitation tip number 3, you want to redirect the negativity. So like saying, okay, so what do we want instead? Because people are going to invariably talk about like our communication sucks. You know, people, we don't have any diversity. We don't, whatever. Okay, well, so what do we want diversity to look like? Okay, so what do we want communication to be instead then? So driving it towards the future and redirect the negativity. You do not want a list of everything that's broken in your culture because that just gives attention to the negativity. So really redirect it and say, what do we want then? What's the future? Let's paint moving forward. So this is to one of the other questions we had earlier. So how can you individually get at the culture we want? So you want to identify those experiences that are driving the beliefs and actions and results. So how we reinforce the experiences we have at work seeds the stories about people and their experiences. So stories create culture, and unmanaged stories create problems with culture, right? So I'm talking with even a friend. This is a real casual example, and you'll have opportunity to practice these skills with people. So I've got a friend who's an education assistant, and her principal came to school with a bad cold, and now my educational assistant friend is off sick. Like she thinks she got the bad cold from her principal. It might be RSV, it's not COVID, like, you know, she's fairly sick. And so of course she just wants to blame the principal who came to work with this bad cold. Well, if we go up here, my friend's experience is she went to work and got sick. So her belief is her principal made her sick. Her action is not wanting to be around the principal anymore, not wanting to be at the school with someone who's so irresponsible to come to work sick. And the result is she's not going to work there after this year, right? The school is going to miss out. She's great with the kids, blah, blah, blah. Well, you have a chance here to shift that story. And so when this person is talking to me about, you know, their bad experience at work, I say, well, gosh, I really admire the principal's dedication to being there. And who else might you maybe have gotten a cold from, right? Like you're full of a school with children. It's not necessarily the principal. So I want to shape your experience maybe differently than how you see it, because you're experiencing it with a really narrow lens. It may or may not be the principal that got you sick. We can't prove that in the end anyway, but is it possible that there's another way to experience that? You know, you have a belief that your principal is super dedicated, they're under some pressure, it's a new school, they really want to show up and be there. Well, maybe I don't hate the principal as much as I did before, right? And the results might be that I work there next year. All right, so that's really managing the stories. So you want to reinforce the behaviors you want in your culture through application. So when we think about application, you can reinforce the why behind the story. So if there's, let's say, for example, that you decide to start these conversations about culture, what we often do is we start at the what. We're going to have a conversation, meet here. We're going to talk about culture, how we're going to do it. We're going to do a bunch of chart papers. We're going to follow the stoplight. And oh, maybe we get at why. You will find the most power when you talk about culture, getting at the why first. So we're going to talk about culture because we want everyone to feel safe and thrive. How are we going to do that? By having a series of meetings. What does that entail? Well, we're going to talk about the stoplight and you give them the structure of your conversation. So really reinforce the why behind the story that you have. So in the example of my friend who's the educational assistant, you know, why did the principal come to work? Maybe not feeling great because the principal's really committed. Maybe they're under a lot of pressure. It's a new school. Give them the why. My friend's thinking, principal doesn't care about anyone. She's sick. She's not thinking straight, right? So give people the why to help drive the story that could shift how they interpret what's going on. So here's some so-so behavior cultural reinforcement. So this is back to that question, right? How does one person start shifting culture? Maybe you're not in a role or it doesn't feel comfortable to have big poster paper conversations. So you want to reinforce the behavior that you think is going to help the culture. So someone might say, hey, thanks. I noticed how you stayed late Friday night to help Mike clean up before shift change. Okay, you're recognizing there's a good behavior there. I want to reinforce the good behavior. That's so-so though. We want to add the why. That's the kind of teamwork we need right now. So not just validating when you see good things happening, but really solidifying the why. Here's another example. You really calm down that client. Whew. Your flexibility coming in early is great. Whew. So if we look at those two, they're so-so. What could we add here that would drive home the story and the why? So calming down a client, why is that important? And I'm really in this area wanting to see if someone's gonna chime in some answers here. What could be the follow-up comment here that drives this behavior? Why does calming down the client matter? Oh, sorry. Dog. Where's my mute?
Not seeing anything yet, Carrie.
Okay, this is, sorry, my dog's gonna bark for a hot minute. This is the nuance. It doesn't take more energy, but it does take some intentionality. So you really calm that client down. They are going to speak well of how we problem solve, right? It reinforces our company brand as an example. Let's look at this one. Your flexibility coming in early is great. Well, so what? Why does that matter? We could reinforce that by saying we are extra ready for the influx of calls that happen right at 8 a.m. Right? So the fact that we're ready for the influx of calls makes coming in early great.
We did have a comment, Carrie.
Right.
I keep losing it. Let me see.
Where is it? Right.
Okay. Richard Murray says, I think that trying to pander employees can create a toxic situation too. Thoughts?
So by pander employees, are you thinking like placating? How do you read that, Zarian? Maybe he can answer a little bit more.
Let me reread it. I think that trying to pander employees can create a toxic environment too.
I need a little more.
Let me see. We can come back to that one. Jody says,
hang on. So with pander, I think you might be thinking that if we're blowing hot air really at somebody, like we're trying to pump them up when they haven't really earned it, that pandering, right? Like placating them or making them validate them when they maybe haven't really earned it. What I want to get at here in these two examples, even this one up here, is you're getting at the behavior, not the person. So the behavior is what you want to drive, not the person. So there is a nuance there between just trying to get negative people positive by zeroing in on like a tiny good thing that they did. What this strategy is really about is reinforcing the behavior for everybody, not just a person that we're trying to get around. All right, Barry, what was the other thing you wanted to say?
Okay. Jody says, I appreciate you realize that our client needed some extra attention to feel good about us.
Yeah, good. Good. That's another one that you realized the client needed extra. Yeah, perfect. Right? So you're saying that they realized what the client needs were, right? It's the behavior of maybe being empathetic with the client, putting yourself in the client's shoes, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, good example. Thanks for doing that. It's easy just to say you really calm that client down. Great, moving on, right? But if we want to drive the behaviors that we want in our culture, we have to really think about reinforcing the behavior we want. So often we'll spend time talking about the unwanted behavior, like why didn't they do a better job calming that client down? Or, yeah, they stayed late, but first time ever, we'll see if that happens again. We really want to think about the positive behavior and reinforcing that. So let's talk about the chance to redirect behavior. So this is maybe earlier to that question you had about pandering to negative employees. So you're going to have behaviors that are unwanted. And again, we're driving for a different experience to drive a different belief, actions, results, right? So here, hey, Neil, when you came in this morning, it looked like you were having a rough morning. You didn't say hi to anyone. So what we want to think about is where we can reinforce the behavior we do want. Hey, Neil, when you came in this morning, it looked like you were having a rough morning. You didn't say hi to anyone. Every person on our team sets the tone for the day. Saying hi matters. In our team, these little gestures make a big difference. So you can still correct the behavior, but you want to explain the why behind correcting the behavior. You just don't want to say like, hey, dude, what's up? You didn't say hi to anyone, or hey, you forgot me for coffee, or hey, somebody left the coffee pot empty again, it's burning in the back room. You don't want to just end it on stopping the negative behavior, but why does it matter to have the better behavior? So here, let's look at this here. Not everyone has taken an extra shift. I'd love to hear some application of this again with everybody. So not everyone has taken a shift. We want to explain why taking a shift matters. We could say I'm letting some people think, and I love the engagement that Zaria is sharing here. So if everyone does a bit, it's easier on all of us, right? Why does it matter? Like if we all pitch in, it's better teamwork. You let me know, Zaria, if people are chiming in with some of that.
Okie dokie. I'm not seeing anything right now.
Perfect. This is like the quintessential, it doesn't matter how functional teams are, it just seems always like this is a cultural bugbear. There are a lot of dishes in the staff room sink. Like, why does that matter? Right? Not just because it's gross and not just the surface, right? But doing your dishes show respect for the next person coming in. And we respect each other. We say, and we value respecting each. Right? So it's just not enough to say like, wow, problem, fix it, but really put words on those values, behaviors, beliefs, and norms that you want to see in your culture. All right, so there's a couple of books here that might be helpful for you when we think about changing.
Oh, Carrie, we got one.
Okay.
Tracy says, it is helpful when we all take pride in our workplace.
Nice. I love it. Thanks, Tracy. Good. Right, so that value of we take pride in our workplace, right? We don't want to say it's embarrassing when someone comes into our staff room and there's dishes everywhere, because that's reinforcing the negative. We want to reinforce what we do want to see happening.
I'm sorry, Carrie, I have one more.
Great.
It says, Jody says, volunteering for extra shift helps us all be more productive and allows us all to share the responsibility.
Perfect. I think I caught that.
Richard Murray says, celebrating wins when we get them.
Yeah, celebrating wins when we get them, exactly. And even when we don't get the wins, shift it to a belief that we can get there, a belief that we will get to that ideal behavior that we want. Good. So let me just go up here, this summary slide. So these are the key strategies that we want to use in our culture. Just press and play here, right? So you want to crystallize what everyone wants in their ideal culture. So the big conversations. And then over time, when you see people showing up the way everyone has agreed, it's really powerful when you reinforce those behaviors. You call it out and you explain why that behavior matters. And lastly, when you see things that are not quite on point, calling it out and redirecting it to the behaviors you want. So this is about making culture tip of the tongue, easy to talk about, easy to process, easy to call out. It's a peer-to-peer thing. It's not just the leader. Everyone has a responsibility for that. And so some of the training I do is role playing peer-to-peer. Like if you and I are in the same company and I do something that just didn't land well for you, how do you tell me? And without it being a big conversation, how do you say, hey, Carrie, that was like Pat. Oh, my bad. You know, or even giving me a space for me to call myself out. Man, I've had a rough morning. Sorry, that was a Pat-like response. Let me just give me a second, right? And make it a language where we can own the culture we want and drive towards it. So there's a couple of resources that may be useful for you. One is I just published this book, Leading Out of the Asshole Trap. It really is about helping people own their culture through communication and kind of stopping the blame game so that people feel empowered and problem solving. Here's another one, Change the Culture, Change the Game. And the pyramid that I talked about in here comes out of this book. It's a little bit not as quick of a read, but some good content for sure. And then lastly, the New Psychology of Leadership. This really talks about that concept of being in the circle. The one on the right is more of an academic. It references empirical articles. So depending on what you like, you may find my book, which is a quick read, couple hours in and out, Change the Culture, Change the Game, real strategy and kind of application and thinking. And then the New Psychology of Leadership is academic. All three are really helpful when I think of you navigating the change you want and not feeling responsible to do it all yourself. Really, how do we flip the switch and kind of get people to own it, get the behaviors they want, and get them in the circle? So that said, I would love for you to, I'm just going to advance this here. Yeah, love the 3 people that responded to the Mentimeter. It needs some work. If you want, feel free to connect with me. This last slide offers a 20% discount on some training if you want. Happy to give you a copy of the PowerPoint slides, or we can just set up a chat just to touch base and talk the world of culture or leadership or whatever you want to sort of untangle in your work. So with that said, Zaria, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Great. That was awesome, Carrie. Good job. I absolutely love that. I love talking to you. I always feel just so like connected, like as you do sessions and everything. It's a fun thing. I do
Thanks.
have a question, Carrie. Like, what kind of made you go into the profession that you went in? Like, what was kind of the driving force
Yeah,
that
great
made you
question.
talk about culture?
Question. I'm gonna, the Mentimeter link is in the chat, so I'm just going to answer this question and be able to look at everyone too. Yeah, so I mentioned that I have an education background and my partner started med school at 39 years old. And so I left education. I was an administrator when we left and moved to like the Caribbean and a bunch of different states, left Canada. And I worked in some crazy environments. And I started seeing some consistency between crazy and not so crazy, and realize that culture is a driving force of that. I say all the time that structure drives behavior. So if you don't have a way to sort of have these conversations or talk about what needs to be talked about, then we're just going to keep bumping up kind of that same challenging stuff. And so that led me to sort of help organizations in what I sort of describe as messy dynamic situations really go slow to figure out what is the structure that's going to help us thrive and work and just rock it. So
Yeah.
that's the story.
Awesome. Yeah. That's different. That's very different. Well, yeah, that was good, Carrie. We got a lot of participation. Thank you everyone for participating. So just before we wrap up, we did announce that we are doing a giveaway for the ones that registered for this event. So I have my little bowl over here.
It's like a
And I'm just, yeah, I kind of just was like, let me think of a productive way to do this. So I was like, I'm just gonna put everybody's name in a bowl.
perfect.
So what I'm gonna do is, I wish I had someone here to kind of help me out here. But
Now, do they have to be on the call? Let's get some boundaries here. Structure drives behavior. Do they
yeah,
need to be on the call to win to get the money?
no, you don't have to actually be on the call to win. Because I mean, we send the recording out anyways. Also, Carrie, if you would like, if anyone would like the presentation slide, can they have that?
Sure. Yeah, they
Yeah.
can fill out that Mentimeter and just let me know and I'll send it out. It's a
Okay.
big file to send to
Yeah.
everybody if they don't want it. So if you want it,
Okay.
absolutely happy to
Okay.
share.
Well, I'll send out the recording as well, in my follow-up email.
I
But
love
okay.
that flexibility, right? Because often, I mean, I signed up for webinars and then my day derails and I just can't attend if
Yeah.
I don't listen to the recording or watch it on
Yeah.
community, whatever. So absolutely. Love that you're
Yeah.
still honoring whoever registered winning the 25 bucks, whether or not they're actually live
Oh
listening.
yeah. I mean, we definitely want to keep everyone participating and keep joining us for more. I mean, we plan on doing them every month throughout the rest of the year. So
It's the
yeah,
high level way.
the high level way. All right, let's pull this. I wish I had someone here to kind of help me out here.
I'm
Let
gonna
me see.
link there.
All right. And the winner is Bonnie Walton.
Bonnie Walton. Is she on?
Um, I don't know. Let me see. I feel like I saw her name earlier.
That would be cool.
They
25
they kind of switch up. 25 bucks and you get a higher level brewmate. So I will be contacting you soon to show you how you can claim your prize.
Awesome.
Also, before we wrap up, again, thank you all for joining us. If you would like to join our next webinar on mastering 2024 employment law updates, that information is on our website, so you can go ahead and go register for that. And that is all I have for today. Again, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Carrie. Um, can't wait to see you in our next higher level retreat.
Awesome. Me too.
And this was fun. So thank you and hope everyone has a good day.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.